and welcome to another interview episode of After the Abuse. In this episode, we'll be talking with Dion Ford. Let's get right into that, shall we? Dion is joining us from the province of Durban in South Africa. Dion, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please tell us a little about your life now.
My life at the moment, I'm quite happy. I am in a stable job. It's taken me many years to get to this point. I do have sort of bouts where I go into depressed states, although nothing compared to what I've sort of suffered for the better part of my life. At the moment I'm in a steady job, but for many years I couldn't keep a job at all. I think my longest job was for 7 years. I'm sort of building up a career at the moment.
Can you please tell us a little about what you had to endure as a child?
It started off as a young boy. I was about 5, and it started off as sort of my mother's youngest brother would come around and visit. I was 5 at the time, he was 16, so he was almost going into adulthood. He would come around and sort of spend time with his sister, his older sister, who was already married. It started off as sort of little games. He used to call it creating a tennis court. So it was, pull up your shirt, and then it was pull out the weeds and all sorts of weird little things like that. It was sort of like okay, now I've done it to you, you do it to me. And then the first sort of really sexual happening was sort of a couple of months after that, when we were away on holiday as a family. We used to go, it was cousins and aunts and uncles and whoever, and I had to share a bungalow at a game reserve with him. I mean, it became more than just playing the game, because it was night time. It was, there was nobody to actually catch him or anything like that. So then it became actually me performing oral sex on him. That carried on for a couple of years, and then we moved across the country, and so everything sort of came to a halt for a few years. And then when I went into early puberty, I think about 11, 12, he moved back to stay with my parents because he was at university. Then it started again. It also started off as the casual come into your room at night, because I had my own room, so he would come into the room, and then it sort of progressed into actual full-on sex, and that carried on for many years until I was about 18.
So what was it that prompted you to start your healing journey?
I don't think I actually ever really dealt with it, because I couldn't tell anybody. I think I was in my early 20s when I first started mentioning it to people, and then I had 1 or 2 friends that were really close, that I would make them swear that they wouldn't say, but they would always wonder why I was the way I was. I mean, I've suffered with the darkest depression from when I was a very young child. I was very destructive in my behavior, in my suicide attempts, my lifestyle, things like that. And they would, and when I used to be drunk, these things used to come out, and I used to say to them, I used to tell them. It was a gradual process of, I was abused. But it was only after a long time that I knew that they hadn't sort of said anything to anybody, that I actually ventured to tell them who it was. It only a few years after that my mother realized that, I sort of, in one of my outbursts of depression, had said to her that I had been abused and whatever. So she knew from about the age of 24, but she never knew who it was. She always presumed that it was in my biological family, that somebody had done something. And maybe only once. She didn't realize that it was in her actual own family, which was my adoptive family. So she knew about it, but she never ever really questioned me. I think she was too scared to find out what the real answer might be.
Yeah.
But also, so she just left it. And so my destructive behavior carried on for many years. And only, I would say, about 4 years ago did she actually come to me and say to me, just out of the blue, was it such and such a person? And it happened to be her older brother. And I said to her, no. I said, why are you bringing this up now? I said, I've sort of dealt with it, inverted commas, just leave it now. And she said, okay, fine, well, if that's the way you want to be. She came back another 2 days later and she said, no, she has to find out. And when I told her, she turned around and said, oh, I would never have guessed it was him. But she says, oh, well, at that age, you could have just put it down to him being a horny teenager. And I thought, how can you just say that? Because the difference in ages from when you're that young to his age is huge compared to, say, when you're 30 and somebody 15 years older is having sex with you. There isn't that huge difference. I mean, your bodies are so different, your everything, the way your mind thinks is so different. So, I mean, I don't see how she could have just sort of swept that under the carpet, said, well, let's put it down to that. And sort of that is the only thing that has held me back from truly healing, although her one sister did know about it because she caught us when I was about 18. But she thought that at that stage I was old enough and it was consensual, although he was married. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was all just hushed and nobody said anything. And so I don't know if I've actually dealt with it. The only way I've managed to deal with it, and the catalyst that has made me decide that needs to be dealt with and dealt with properly, is that I couldn't go on with the depression anymore. I couldn't go on with the destructive life I was living, the drinking. I was living on the streets. I landed up in jail for 6 weeks. And then I thought, do I want this life? I just had to admit to myself, well, firstly, now I've created a problem by becoming an alcoholic. Do I want to eventually land up like my biological father, being a hobo on the streets? Yeah, no, I couldn't see myself. Then, of course, there's God.
Depression is very common for abuse survivors. What is it that you do to snap yourself out of it when the depression gets really bad?
At this time, I truly try and keep myself busy. And at this time of my life, I don't seem to have a lack of trying to keep myself busy because I'm actually working 2 jobs. Before this, I reveled in my depression. I sort of gave into it and allowed it to sort of consume me. I used to go into states of almost a catatonic state, of just drifting into my own head and imagining a different life. And I would actually go so deep into my own thoughts that I was living that life. And I would sometimes be like that for 7-8 hours a day, where I would just disappear into my own brain, my own mind.
So what would you say to someone who's just starting their healing journey?
What I would say is, speak about it. Speak about it a lot. Try and find somebody who's been through a similar situation, who knows what you're talking about. It's very, very, I found that in the AA, I found that talking to like-minded people, or people that have been through similar experiences, although they might not be the same as yours, they have different ways of dealing with things which you might not have thought of, of dealing with things and how to cope. But also, I think the most important is to not keep these things to yourself. Educate the people, educate the world. A lot of people think that, it'll never happen in my family. And, well, it happened in my very, very staunch Catholic family, so...
And what would you say, as individuals or as a society, we can do to protect children now?
At this stage, I think that being as open as we can with children and allowing them the freedom to speak, and also to encourage them to know that, if they do need to speak and about absolutely anything, they need to have somebody they feel comfortable with enough, to try and find somebody that they're comfortable enough that they can open up to that person about absolutely anything. Because I think the worst part of this whole thing is that, who do I actually tell? I think that's the worst thing that keeps you trapped in that mind is, who can I actually tell? And I think it's also a fact that, at that age you think, oh, well, I'm going to get into trouble for doing something wrong. I know that's how I felt. I think I was exposed to it at such a young age that it's almost all that I knew. I was in an orphanage for 2 years, and there was an older girl who molested me as well. I think sex has always been something I've been aware of since my earliest thoughts of 3 years old, which is quite sickening if you think about it.
Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Dion, for sharing with us. We wish you all the best in your healing journey going forward. That's all for this episode. Have a good day and take care of yourself. If you're looking for resources on helping yourself or someone else who has gone through abuse, you can visit rain.org. Or, for resources specifically for men, go to oneinsix.org. If you're struggling with thoughts of suicide, please call one of the numbers in your area on the screen.